Hello everyone, this is part 2 of What If Naruto Was Banished and Trained by Kenshiro, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
In the town center stood a large podium with 6 hanging ropes in loops there that had been recently knotted to hang their intended victims. They were currently hung around the necks of 6 of the town's civilians, with 3 of them being Tsunami, Inari and Tazuna themselves. The reason for this is because they are the largest supporters for Naruto as well as the biggest haters to the Leaf since his death was made known to the world, so they are being made an example of to show the others that they will have to fall in line or else they would suffer the same fate. Standing around the raised podium are the other civilians in the town who can do nothing other than just watch as the 6 are going to be hanged in front of them. Some try to stop them from killing them, but the Leaf Nin surrounding the podium are holding everyone back from trying to interfere with the execution. 2 of the shinobi there just so happen to be the duo, Izumo and Kotetsu, the infamous Konoha guards. Monsters. You're all fucking monsters. Why are you doing this to them? Don't kill them. Please. People of Wave, these criminals have been convicted of keeping S-class details from the Leaf, therefore they shall be sentenced to death as so ordered by our Hokage, declared a Jonin on top of the podium. Liars. You scum invade our country and expect us to believe that bull. Leaf can burn in hell for all we care. Killers. Traitors. Scum. Silence. Roared the Jonin, who used his killing intent to silence the crowd. The execution will now commence. He nods to the executioner, who nods back and grabs the lever to release the floors underneath the 6 people chosen to be executed. Stop. Let my son go, he has nothing to do with this. Cried and begged Tsunami while Tazuna glared and cursed at the Leaf Nin, and all the while Inari sobs away in fear of his unavoidable death. Before the executioner can go through with pulling the lever, a loud bang fills the air. Silence envelops the town as nobody makes a move, and after what feels like hours, but is actually seconds, the executioner collapses onto his side with a hole in his chest. Then all hell broke loose. Wave citizens all dispersed with shouts and screams of terror while the Leaf Nin tense up for a fight since they figured one was coming. What was that? Shouted a Chunin, whose head jerks back from a sudden projectile that struck him in the head with enough force to break his neck, courtesy of a strange hooded man who was calmly walking towards them as he tossed a few rocks up and down in his hand. The Leaf Nin either widened their eyes or gasped when they saw the man stand there, who had somehow managed to throw a small rock with enough force to not only break a man's neck but to penetrate through a man's chest through sheer power alone. A gust of wind causes the Jonin on the podium to cross his arms across his face. The wind stops, and when he was able to see as well as the others with him, he saw that the strange man was gone, but he felt something sinking into the back of his neck. Die, whispered the stranger before he channeled chakra through his fingers that he had sunk into the man's neck, and watch as his head exploded out the front of his face. Taking the corpse, he threw it towards the other shinobi as both an open challenge to try and kill him as well as a clear example of what would happen if they tried. He then used his hands to easily slice the ropes so that the victims wouldn't die. Thank you, stranger, said Tazuna as he rubbed his throat once he got the rope off of it. It was no problem at all, Tazuna, said the stranger as he ripped the rope off of Inari's neck. How do you know my name? Is it so strange for a friend to know your name? Said the stranger before he pulled his hood off to show them his face. Big bro, muttered Inari when he recognizes the blonde hair even though it had been cut short and the whisker marks on his hero's face. Wow, look at you, Inari. You're not a runt anymore, said Naruto with a smirk as he rubbed the top of the teen's head in a fatherly fashion. Tsunami and Tazuna both looked at him in surprise since they didn't expect him to come to their rescue yet again, since they along with the rest of the world had been told that he had died 7 years ago. They were even more surprised by his threatening appearance, yet Tsunami blushed heavily as she looked him over and saw the bulging muscles that he had on him. She couldn't help but have a brief fantasy about him, but in the end she shook it out of her head. Now go. I don't want anyone hurt from the fighting, he told them while pointing towards the direction of their home. We will talk more about this when I am done here. The family of course didn't really feel exactly safe as he said that since there was still quite a few Leaf shinobi surrounding him, and they began to wonder if Naruto would be able to defend against all of them. But they decided to trust him and quickly left the area to allow Naruto to fight the invaders without distraction. Naruto saw two Chunin running behind him to get to the group, but he quickly put a stop to that as he appeared between them in a burst of speed, surprising the Chunin. One of them finds Naruto's whole arm in his stomach while the other one can only take a step back before Naruto punches him hard in the gut. Naruto then whipped the dead Chunin off his arm and quickly punched the other one multiple times all over his body before he kicked him toward a group of shinobi. Before the body even hit the ground, it exploded into bloody chunks, with his bones becoming short-range shrapnel that hit multiple shinobi in various places. None of the damage done by the sharp bits of bones was life-threatening, but they were painful since they did puncture the skin. The Leaf Nin looked at this man with a look of both shock and horror as they saw their comrade just explode in front of them. "Wait a second, isn't that Naruto?" asked Izumo, who recognized the whisker marks on the blonde. This shocked all who heard this, since the demon brat was supposed to be dead for the past 7 years, so they all began to wonder how the hell was he still alive. And where had he been to gain such muscles and power? A Jonin notices this as well and grins, since it was a golden opportunity to aid their village for the coming war. Change of plans. Capture the Kyuubi and bring him back to Leaf. Lady Hokage will grant us a large reward if we return to the village with the demon. Smirking, Naruto walked towards the group as he began to slowly crack his knuckles as he did so. Every crack they heard made them begin to feel unsettled as he did it, and he silently reveled in the fact that they were unnerved by him simply cracking his knuckles. "Give up, demon," said one of the Chunin that remained as he brandished his sword in preparation for the fight they would have. "Look around you. There is 40 of us and only one of you, boy. You have no chance of victory here." Naruto then began to laugh as he stood there, and doubled over as the laughter got harder to the point that a tear fell from his eye. "And what exactly did you find funny about that?" "It's just funny to me that you suck so hard at math," said Naruto as he wiped the tear from his eye and calmed himself down from laughing so hard. "And what the fuck is that supposed to mean?" "You said that there are 40 of you," said Naruto as he folded his arms in front of him, "yet I only count 20 of you." As soon as he said that, the 20 shinobi that had gotten hit by the bone shrapnel exploded into multiple bloody chunks. Naruto had learned that since he was able to use chakra, which Kenshiro was unable to, he was able to use his Hakato techniques to overpower and corrupt his enemy's chakra system to force them to violently explode like they just did. Earth style, Earth Spikes Jutsu. Spikes of rock rise up from the out of the ground and hit Naruto square in the chest. The shinobi smiled as they see this, since they thought that they had won so easily, yet their smiles quickly faded as they saw that the attack hadn't hurt him and instead broke off at the tip, with Naruto standing there looking unimpressed. He quickly then charged forward towards the person who had used the attack on him and grabbed his arms. He quickly pulled them down hard to the point that those around him heard the snapping of bone. He then swiped his hand across his neck in a hard sudden motion that broke his neck that made his body fall forward. To which Naruto kicked off his head and grabbed it before it got too far. He then spun around and threw it hard to the point that it impaled another shinobi directly in the chest. He fell over dead, the entire time feeling the head moving inside him. One of the main lessons that Kenshiro told him during his training was to be the most unpredictable that you possibly could, to use shock and awe to horrify your opponent so that they will make mistakes and be far easier to decimate. "Retreat. Fall back to the village," ordered the last living Jonin, who ran towards the bridge along with most of the other Chunin. "What about the demon?" asked another Chunin who runs alongside the Jonin. "We'll have to bring reinforcements from Leaf, but at least we now know where he has been hiding for all these years." As they reached to the end of the bridge that connected Wave Country to Fire Country, they noticed a large shadow that was hiding in the fog. And to their utter horror, the Kyuubi himself came out of the fog and roared at them in rage. And before they could even put up any form of defense that in the end would ultimately fail, since not a single one of them was capable of blocking the power behind his attack, he blew out a stream of fire that roasted them alive where they stood and burned them down to nothing but ash, which then blew into the wind. Back in town, 5 Chunin were still fighting against Naruto himself, unaware to the fact that they were the last of the Leaf Nin in the entire country. They all looked tired and sore except for Naruto, who was grinning away at them with not a single scratch on him, and from looks alone you could tell that he was winded in the slightest. In his left hand is a heart that he caught from the current Chunin that he had killed, since once he exploded Naruto caught the heart in his hand, which he then crushed with his hand while looking at the shinobi who was still there, who actually thought that they could take him out by themselves. They were all proven wrong in the worst possible way. How the hell is the demon brat this strong? Wasn't he supposed to be weak? exclaimed a Chunin with a scar going down his face. Everyone feels a shudder go up their spines when Naruto smirks, which shows them that he is just playing with them and hasn't taken this fight seriously since the very beginning. Along with his bulging muscles as well as his intimidating aura, it just further proved to them that he was the QB in human form. Anyone can change after 7 years. I just changed for the better while you and the rest of that rotting village have gotten weak, chuckled Naruto. I was free to learn more than your village would allow me to, since then I would be too powerful to control. And they were right to fear my power, since look at what I have been able to do in such a short time. Your forces are dead, and I still stand no matter what you throw at me. Izumo and Kotetsu grit their teeth in frustration, since it's obvious to them that Naruto is a lot stronger than any of them, and the both of them are beginning to think of making a run back to the village, since it was becoming more apparent that they would not win here. Before they could order a full retreat, a Chunin to their left starts to quickly fly through hand seals. Earth style, mud slide jutsu. The floor liquefies and heads towards Naruto as a wave of mud. A second Chunin goes through her own hand signs and shoots a bolt of lightning at the wave, making it a lot more dangerous, and the third Chunin runs around the wave to attack the blonde if the two jutsus fail. The large wave of lightning-enhanced mud threatens to swallow Naruto whole if it wasn't for him lifting his hand up over himself and bringing it down in a simple karate chopping motion. The wave splits apart and flows past him and through it all. He doesn't even blink as it happens. But, how? Stuttered a Chunin in fear while he takes a few steps back from Naruto in fear. How? I was trained by a man who taught me how to do things that many would deem impossible. What I just did was proof of that, Naruto answered. His ears twitched, and without even looking, he moved to the right to dodge the downward sword slash and grabbed the back of the man's head. He then began to squeeze his head to the point that his eyes exploded out his head. He then slammed the body into the ground, smashing the head into paste as he did so. Screw this. I'm out, yelled a Chunin who turned to make a run for it. Coward. Don't run, we can win this, shouted the only remaining kunoichi of the invasion forces. Izumo and Kotetsu glance at each other and wonder if they should follow the man's lead. Honestly, I think he made the smart move. Sadly, the results won't be any different than if he had stayed and fought. Naruto's enhanced eyes could clearly see through the forestry, and he watched as the Chunin lost his head after running straight into the QB who was waiting on the outskirts of town in wait for this very situation and bit his head clean off. Water style, starch syrup binding rope, yelled Izumo, who spits out a high viscosity water rope. Kotetsu summoned his edge blade and runs at Naruto in hopes to skewer him with it. The other Chunin holds two kunai in a reverse grip and follows Kotetsu's example by charging as well. The water rope wraps around Naruto's left arm and tightens its grip. Izumo smirked as it did, because all he has to do is pull the rope and the demon will lose his arm from his action. However, his plan changes when Naruto conducts lightning chakra into his arm, which connects to the rope of water and conducts off of it. While he was trained for years on how to use the Hakato, he was still able to use chakra in such a way to manipulate the elements. Before Izumo can cancel the jutsu, the lightning reached him and shocks him with a current of a high voltage of electricity, causing him to scream in pain as it happened. He fell to the floor in pain, unable to move due to the lightning messing up his nervous system. Kotetsu swings his sword at Naruto, but Naruto counters by grabbing it with his bare hand and breaking the blade with pure strength alone into various sized pieces. The other Chunin charges, but Naruto sees her, so he kicks Kotetsu away and swipes at the kunoichi with his hand. She quickly replaces herself with a log, which finds itself cut in half from the chop. Before she can try the same technique for a second time, Naruto throws one piece of the chopped log, the sharpest one of the two sides, at her and impales her through the chest and through a tree. She clawed at the log impaled in her chest in vain as she slowly bled out from it. Cracking his neck and his knuckles as he stood there, Naruto grins at the two remaining Chunin, one still on the floor. Come on. I've got all day and literally thousands of ways to kill you. We can't win. We can't fight this demon, thought Kotetsu, who is finally starting to fear for his life after seeing the entire invasion force die by Naruto's hands. He puts a hand into his weapons pouch and grabs what he needs from within it. He pulls out 3 smoke bombs and throws them at the floor. A large cloud of smoke erupts and covers Kotetsu and Izumo, yet Naruto just finds it just annoying, since even though he can't see them with the naked eye, he was still able to sense them clear as day. He pulsed his chakra, which blows away the smoke to show that both Kotetsu and Izumo were gone, but he already could sense that before he pulsed his chakra in the first place. The hunt's on, said Naruto as he smirked and stretched his legs. He took his time as he did so since he was not really in any sort of hurry here. Once he stretched his legs fully, he got into a runner's position and then charged in the direction he sensed that they had gone with enough power and speed to crack the ground below him. 3 miles away from where Naruto had just been, Kotetsu was jumping from tree to tree with his friend on his shoulder. Damn, I never thought the brat would get so strong, said Kotetsu. Izumo couldn't reply since he was still feeling the paralyzing effects of Naruto's lightning attack, but he nods his head to show his agreement but winces at the struggle of doing so since his nerves were on fire. They land on another tree branch, only for it to fall when the tree that it was attached to was punched over, which made the branch that they were aiming for no longer available. Thinking fast, Kotetsu jumps off of it and throws a kunai with wire wrapped around the end of it. The kunai sticks into another branch and he swings to the floor while still holding Izumo. Both land to their feet, although Izumo does it with difficulty since his feet were still shot. Hello boys, miss me? Asked Naruto in a mocking tone, with a big grin on his face as well as he stood there with his arms crossed in front of him. How the hell did you catch up to us? We had a head start on you, said Kotetsu with wide eyes. You're talking to the guy who got away from Anbu when he was 10, deadpanned the blonde. So catching up to the two of you was no real challenge. Fucking brat. Why didn't you just die like everyone believed you did 7 years ago? This time, Naruto loses all traces of humor and instead, releases his chakra in an intimidating way. Izumo and Kotetsu are blown back when a pillar of blood-red chakra erupts and pierces the sky above. Nearby trees are blown from the force and even the wind seems to be trying to get away from the foul chakra. Izumo's body was unable to handle the strain of having so much pressure on him at once and died from it. Kotsu was not so lucky since Naruto had quickly charged forward and stabbed him in the brain with a single finger laced with his chakra. You are the only survivor of this invasion, said Naruto as Kotetsu stood there in a brain-dead sort of fashion. So I want you to leave here and walk back towards that corrupt place you call home. Once you return there, I want you to give Suna a message for me. He then leaned in and whispered the message that he wanted him to relay to her. Once he had said what he wanted to say, he pulled his finger out of Kotetsu's head and watched as the now brain-dead shinobi began to slowly walk towards the leaf. He guessed that at the rate he was going that it would take a week and a half at least to return and deliver the message he wanted him to. Naruto then made a shadow clone that he had head towards Tazuna's house while he headed away from Wave Country since he needed to be elsewhere at the moment, but he made a mental note to return since there was someone who he wanted to see again here and he was sure she would be glad to see him again as well. Leaf Village, a week and a half later. Is there any news from our forces in Wave Country? Suna asked her assistant, Shizune, who shakes her head as a negative. No word as of yet. Could there have been a chance that they've been defeated? Suna just shakes her head no. That's impossible. Wave Country only has a few samurai at best. The force I sent should have been enough to capture the country. I'm just wondering why I haven't gotten a message from them yet, remarked Suna in confusion. They haven't called in because they're all dead. Suna and Shizune look over to the open window to see Jiraiya sitting on it with a serious face. Dead. How could they have died? I gave them a simple mission to capture a small weak country and they still failed. Yelled Suna in disbelief. Jiraiya sighs to himself, knowing that what he's gonna say next will most likely tip her over the edge, but she needs to know this since it was important to know. It wasn't Wave who killed them. From what I was able to find out from reliable sources, it was a single man that had killed them. Both master and apprentice stared at the Toad Sannin with wide eyes and actually have to study him for any deceit since what they heard was just too unbelievable to process. You can't be serious, said Suna, but Jiraiya grimly nods his head in confirmation. Sadly, I am. My spy in Wave told me about how the village had been under our control, but then a single man came out of nowhere and decimated our forces single-handedly. He left no survivors and did a god job at making sure of that. However, what gets me worried is the description of the man himself, he said, getting a raised eyebrow from Suna. Wait a minute, our forces were wiped out by a single man, and we just tried to conquer a neutral country, the doing of which meant the difference of surviving or dying in this upcoming war, and that's what you're worried about? Asked Suna while trying her best to keep her rage in. News had probably spread to the other villages about Leaf's attempt on Wave, and they're almost likely preparing to retaliate even more now than ever. You'd be interested if you knew that the one who did this is not from Wave country. Suna and her assistant lose their train of thought after hearing that piece of information. A human with that type of power is just wandering the elemental countries. That's not a happy thought. He must be a mercenary if what I am being told is true, and we need to find this man so he could help us in this upcoming war, thought Suna. Did you get a description of the man? Asked the slug Sanan with a hint of hope. If she can find whoever that person is and capture him either through force or paying him the proper fee, it would make things so much easier. Hell, they might even be able to tempt this man to start a clan with that type of power here in their village. Sorry, but I didn't get a description. But I do know that they're male. My spy was in a rush to send me the message since the writing was squiggly at best. My contact has gotten silent since then, so he's either lying low or he was killed off, finished Sunad, who folds her fingers together and leans her chin on them. Lady Sunad, you must bring this up to the council. They must know of the development of the attack force as well as this man who is out there with the power to decimate our forces so easily, said Shizune. As much as she wants to say no, Sunad can't deny the fact that the council needs to know. This sort of thing is too big for her to simply brush under the rug. You do know that they'll want to send off more people to Wave in order to retake it, told Jiraiya, knowing full well what the elders will want to do. We won't try anything as of now. We've lost enough ninjas so far, and I don't want to see any more casualties so soon, since we will need everyone that we can get to survive this war. While we may not have the numbers for defense alone against 2 villages, we still have some of the brightest strategists in the world, so we can still survive if we plan this out just right. You should also know that Iron Country samurai have been hired to guard Wave Country, with Mifune himself leading them. And why are they doing that? Asked Sunad in shock. They are usually neutral in these conflicts. So why are they there? Mostly because we tried to invade a neutral country, so they have taken upon themselves to protect a neutral country like themselves. Lady Sunad, shouted a shinobi that had stormed into the room. What is it? Said Sunad angrily, since he had just stormed into her office unannounced. Kotetsu is back in the village and is in need of immediate medical aid. What? Shouted Sunad as she stood up. We need to get him to the hospital immediately. They all left the office in a rush, since Kotetsu could tell them who the man was that had killed off their forces. They arrived on the scene shortly afterwards, and what they saw horrified them. Kotsu was there on the ground, crawling towards the Hokage tower, but once she was in his sights, he turned towards her instead and began to crawl toward her. During the long slow walk back towards the village, he had lost an arm as well as a leg to wolves, yet even though he lost so much blood from it, his body continued to move forward, since those were his orders from Naruto. Kotetsu, asked Sunad as she used medical chakra into her hands and used them to heal what she could at the moment to prep him for the surgery that he would definitely need. What happened to you? Kotetsu gargled something that was incomprehensible. So Sunad leaned in more to see if she could make out what he said. He repeated what he had gargled the first time, and once he was done saying it, his head exploded, covering her whole upper body with blood and brain matter. Sunad stood up, and from the look of shock on her face, those around her didn't know if it was from what was said to her or the fact that she was just next to a head that had literally exploded in her face. Sunad, asked Shizune with concern, are you okay? What did he say to you? He told me, stuttered Sunad, that Naruto is still alive. The silence that followed lasted for quite a bit after she had said that. Iwa. Naruto had walked to Iwa to handle a problem before it got out of hand later on in the future. He had walked there from Wave Country at a fast yet steady rate since he was in a hurry, but not that great of one. As he appeared close to the front gates that led into the village, he was stopped by several Iwa shinobi that were on guard. Naruto couldn't help but smirk as he saw this, since for most of his shinobi career he had always been told that Iwa was the type of village that preferred quantity over quality, and the fact that they had so many shinobi on guard duty at the front gate only solidified that. But then again, they were setting up for war, so maybe he was just overthinking it. You there? Said a jonin with an eye patch over his left eye, state your business here. I am here to speak to the Chushikage, said Naruto, and if you do not go and get him within the next few seconds, I will go through you to meet him. You dare threaten us, said another jonin, do you have any idea of who we are? So I take that as a no on the fetching of your cage. Am I right to assume this? You're damn right that we won't fetch him. Naruto just sighed as he stood there for a brief second before he appeared behind them, still looking at the large doors that were closed that prevented him from entering. The several shinobi then flew backwards themselves and all hit the doors with enough force to not only knock them unconscious but to blast the doors off their hinges as well. Naruto was about to take a step into the village when he stopped mid-step. He smiled as the shadow clone had puffed out and the memories of what it had done came to him. He quickly made another one who then used the Hirishin to teleport back towards Wave. While the real Naruto had gone to do what needed to be done at Iwa, the clone had gone back into town and began to clean up the mess that he had made when he fought the Leaf Shinobi. He burned the corpses and destroyed the podium that was to be used as an execution ground since it was not needed anymore, nor would it ever, since the people here were peaceful. He stopped a spy of Jiraiya's from giving a complete report of what had happened here and saw that the message had said that a strange man had killed off their forces by himself but didn't have a clue as to his identity. He knew that this would help spread panic to the Leaf, so he sent it through the proper channels with Kyuubi's help by having the message secretly delivered to another of Jiraiya's spies who would then give it to Jiraiya himself. Once everything was cleared out, the people of the village had decided to come out and celebrate the return of their hero who had saved them for a second time, and all the while Naruto couldn't help but notice Tsunami's quick lustful gazes as well as hear her whispering, "If only I was younger." Naruto told the people that even though he stopped the invasion force this time, that unless they get a proper group to defend them, that Konoha would just send more out to attack and try to do what the first invasion force failed to do. So Tazuna had a friend of his send word to Mifune in Iron Country to call in a favor that he owed Tazuna since they were old drinking buddies to aid them long enough to not be attacked again until the war between the three villages was over. Mifune came within the next few days along with a large group of samurai to protect the people, all the while the people celebrated the entire week away. Within the week, Naruto had met with a drunken Tsunami since she was celebrating with her father by drinking with him since it was a special occasion. She had gone up to him and just grabbed his head and kissed him, but then suddenly stopped and cried since she claimed that she loved him, but the differences in their ages would make it impossible for them since they wouldn't be able to escape the judgment of other people. Naruto told her that he had a way to reverse her age, to which she jumped in joy about, but he warned her it would be quite painful to do. She basically demanded that he do it anyway, to which he just assumed that it was the booze making her act this way, but the conviction was real enough. So he poked all her pressure points at once, which caused her body to stiffen in pain. He then grabbed her head and channeled chakra through her system. Doing so caused her body's age to regress until she had the body she had when she was 21. Once the process was done, she leapt on him and basically mouth-raped him with her tongue. Tazuna and Inari covered their eyes and looked away from this since neither one of them wanted to see her like this, since for Inari that was his mother and no child should ever see their mother act like that. Tazuna was conflicted about it since that was his daughter and like most fathers he was concerned about her well-being, but here was the man who had saved them not once but twice in his life, so having such a son-in-law appealed to him. So he jokingly told them that they should get hitched, to which Naruto surprised him by saying he would if she wanted to. She of course wanted to, but she was warned that as the last of his clan that he would most likely have multiple women in his life, to which she just kissed him more and told him that as long as he loved her that it would be okay, and Inari wasn't against it since he would now have a father figure again in his life. So once the news of the proposal became known to the people, there was even more celebration than before. The two of them were married by Mifune himself, and the people all came together to build them a home of their own, which with the combined effort only took 3 days, even though they built a house twice as big as any of the others in town. Once the house was built, the two of them entered it and Naruto placed sound suppression seals all over since what they had planned would get loud. So after all the prep work was done, they went at it like animals, with the clone ripping off her clothes and thrusting into her like a madman. Over the course of the next several days they screwed in every room of the house before the shadow clone was finally spent and puffed away. The newly created clone of Naruto appeared in Tsunami's bedroom in a flash of yellow and smirked when he saw a cum-coated Tsunami kneeling on the bed, with both hands pushing her big tits toward her face and licking the sperm the previous Naruto clone had shot on them. His cock got hard instantly and twitched madly in his pants at the sight of the slutty woman, wearing her wedding dress, but it had been modified to look extremely erotic. It was made of silk and flowery laces. The necklines of her dress dipped to below her breasts, completely exposing her incredible firm bosom and stiff nipples. The trailing white skirts were nigh translucent, and there were vertical slits up the front and back, revealing her pussy and ass for him to drink in with his eyes. He knew why his fellow clone didn't bother to get her naked, because the dress was simply a massive turn-on for him. Thank the gods for gifting me such a beautiful woman in this world to be my wife, the Naruto clone said stupidly, gaining the attention of the black-haired woman. A seductive smile appeared on her face when she saw him, and she then raised her hand to make the come-over gesture with her index finger, saying, "Come here, honey," she said sultrily, "come and fuck your bride." "Damn right. I'm coming," the clone said excitedly and hurriedly removed his clothes, throwing his jacket and pants away to stand completely naked in the room, with his cock hard and standing tall in front of him as he prepared to fuck his wife. He then jumped on the bed and kneeled down in front of Tsunami, smashing his lips against hers and inserted his tongue into her mouth, one hand groping her tit and the other furiously fingering her pussy, getting the cum of the latest clone out to make room for him. Tsunami was pushed down to the bed in the same position and happily returned the favor by kissing him back and stroked the underside of his cock, as well as fondling his massive family jewels. His muscular body easily pinched her down and kept her in the place he wanted. Naruto mentally smirked when he felt his cock meet her pussy lips and thrust his hip forward just a little to insert the head of his cock into her tight fold. Even after being fucked by his clone before him for days, Tsunami was still craving for more and her pussy was still as tight as ever for him, a unique trait that was hard to find in human women nowadays. Naruto only waited until Tsunami finally wrapped her legs around his waist to thrust his cock into her abused pussy, going ball deep in one single thrust, and moaned out at her tight tunnel clenched tightly around his cock. All Tsunami could do was moan, as the 13 inches piece of meat once again stretched her to the limit and filled her full like never before. He then pulled his hips back before slamming forward into the now moaning woman, setting an immediate and brutal pace as he started fucking her. For the next 10 minutes, Tsunami could only moan as her body had experienced so many orgasms she was fairly certain she'd lost the ability to count, much less keep track of the amount rapidly adding up. He was fucking her so good the speed was so intense and almost inhuman, just like how his other clone had fucked her and played with her. Each time they went at it, the clone would come at least 4 times before she passed out, so she would always make sure the clone cream pied her inside through all her 3 holes and on her tits as well before he was forced to stop since she passed out. Coming. The Naruto clone cried out and slammed his hip down as hard as he could, groaning out in pleasure as he exploded into her. But instead of stopping and enjoying the feeling, he raised his hip and started to fuck her while coming like a broken hose into her again, making Tsunami scream out as she rapidly came around his cock. After he was done, Naruto pulled his cock out of her pussy and flipped Tsunami around and got her on her knees. Taking a hold of her arms, he pulled them back by the elbow, causing her back to arch slightly and her breasts to jut out and bounce. He pulled his hips back before slamming forward into the now screaming woman's anus, setting an immediate and fast pace as he started fucking her in the ass. The fucking Naruto gave her caused her boobs to bounce up and down, rapidly striking her chin. They would continue to do this for some time, and would do so until she was completely satisfied, for he was a loving husband. Walking into the village of Iwa and away from the front gate that had been blasted open, a large metal construct protecting the hidden stone village, Naruto was stopped by 2 more gate guards. "Halt," one called out, frowning as he took in Naruto's hair and eyes. "State your name and purpose in this village." "Namikaze Naruto, here to see the Chushikage," he answered, using a name they would definitely recognize since it belonged to their sworn enemy. "En Namikaze. As in Namikaze Minato, the yellow flash?" one guard asked, paling to a shade normally reserved for a certain snake Sannin that hid away in Rice Country. Naruto frowned, hating his relation to the man but requiring the reputation it garnered, especially in Iwa. "Yes, he was my father. During the training expedition in the Western Wastelands, a couple of years into it to be precise, Naruto was by himself as Kenshiro went to meet an old college. During that time he trained in the arts of his clan as well as his father. In the middle of the session he felt vast pain that forced both the spirits of his parents out of his body like it had done to the Kyuubi himself. His mother had been ecstatic about the fact that they were alive again and had hugged her son who she loved with all her heart. Minato smiled as he looked around and saw that they were not in the elemental countries. He asked where they were and what had happened to Konoha, but it was at that point that Naruto growled as he went on to explain what his life had been like up to that point and his plans for the future. His mother had been very supportive of his life choices, yet his father had gotten angry at him for them. He demanded that Naruto return home and begs for his old shinobi position and to protect the village as he had before him. Minato was too loyal to Konoha, and even in death that loyalty was stronger than anything else. Yet Naruto told him that Konoha could burn in hell for all he cared. Minato then quickly prepared a seal to help remold Naruto's mind, but Kushina saw this and confronted him on it. Minato told her to get out of the way, but she refused, to which he then shoved the Rasengan into her chest and said that Naruto was a weapon that must protect his home no matter what the scenario. Minto then tried to use the seal he had prepared to use on Naruto, but was stopped when Kushina used her chakra chains to hold him in place. This gave Naruto ample time to break his arms so that he wouldn't be able to use jutsu of any sort. He went on to explain that the Namika's name would become forgotten to time and that his children will never know who Minato was, and in a few generations he would become forgotten entirely. Minato scowled as he said this, but Naruto just tapped his forehead with a finger and walked past him towards his mother's dying body. Minato exploded behind him, and yet he didn't even look back as he did. Naruto held his mother's body as she voiced her last words that were of love towards him and encouragement to live his life as he wished. Dynamicas. One of the guards yelled, both rushing him at the same time. Sighing in annoyance, Naruto vanished and reappeared between the two, his hands whipping out and swatting him away. In a speeding blur, the two Iwanin were sent crashing into the village walls, cracking the stone and losing consciousness. Naruto could have easily killed them, but that was not what he wanted to do right now. First with those weaklings that invaded Wave and now these two, I really need to limit my strength further. Naruto mused, staring down at his hands. Unlike the wastelands with all the bandits and wannabe rulers out there, the people here are just so fragile, I can't expect them to survive hits that would have been shrugged off by the bandits. Keeping that thought at the back of his mind and returning to his current situation, Naruto turned his attention to the giant gate that stood before him, his thoughts taking a more devious and fun-garnering turn. I might as well bring the cage to me rather than going to him. It will likely save more time since I would have to fight nearly every shinobi of Iwa just to get to him, and make it easier to convince him. His thoughts decided, Naruto raised an arm and extended a finger, channeling and focusing his chakra at the fingertip. Pouring a great amount of dark blue power into the technique, he manipulated it into a ball roughly the size of his head, one that was slowly growing in size as time passed. Once the ball was roughly doubled in size, Naruto flicked his finger, launching the technique at the city gates. He had taken the teachings of his mentor and used it to make a far more powerful form of his ranged energy attack. He used the Rasengan as a conduit of sorts and pushed vast amounts of chakra into a projectile that could be as big or as small as he wanted. In a blur of blue light, the ball of energy struck the gate and slowly began to sink into the metal, melting the nearby material into a thick, gooey sludge made up of melted metal. Once half the ball had sunk into the gate, Naruto launched another small blast of energy at it, causing an immediate and terrifying chain reaction. The ball exploded with the force of 1,000 explosive tags, sending massive shock waves throughout the village and knocking over many people close to the gate. Less than 10 seconds after the explosion happened, the Chushikage himself appeared on a nearby rooftop, along with a contingent of Jonin, Chunin and Genin appearing around him an instant later. As the dust cleared, they were met with quite the terrifying sight. The massive gates that had protected the village for decades had been completely destroyed, a massive and spacious remaining in their place. Standing on the other end of the crater was a man that happened to look like a warrior that Onoki himself had fought in his youth, and the memory of that day has forever haunted him. It was one of the reasons that when Minato had attacked during the Third Shinobi War that he surrendered, since he feared that Minato had been trained by that man, even if it was only slightly. The kind of power he had seen that man use was not human in any possible way. Who are you? What do you want? The Chushikage shouted, his face calm but his eyes burning with rage, yet it was outlined with apparent fear since he was afraid that the monster of a man from his past had not only trained a student but sent that student to finish off what he had started long ago. He was a very short old man, with a big red nose, triangular beard and angular mustache. Despite his comical appearance, Onoki was an extremely powerful shinobi, one that had gained the title of Onoki of both scales and was regarded as one of the three pillars of the shinobi world due to his great power, a title shared by only he, Sarutobi Hiruzen and Salamander Hanzo. My name is Namikaze Naruto, son of Namikaze Minato. Naruto called back, suppressing his flinch at the claim. His reply seemed to cause a great amount of unease among the Iwa nin, many of them gasping and slipping into their fighting stances, the combined killing intent being brushed off by the blonde. Onoki on the other hand seemed to actually calm down at that, his rage vanishing and his eyes focusing, the man either prepared to speak or battle. He saw that even though this young Namikaze had attacked his men, they were clearly still alive since they were in one piece, as well as the fact they were still moving. I'm here to talk about an alliance, Naruto added, causing some of those who heard him to blink and growl at his words. Why would we want to ally with Konoha? Onoki called back, eyes narrowed in thought. Not to mention the fact that not only have you destroyed our gate, which has withstood the test of time since the founding of our village, you are also the son of our most hated enemy, Minato Namikaze. In the blink of an eye, the blonde vanished from his spot several dozen meters away and appeared a mere 10 feet from the large group of shinobi, surprising and terrifying many with his impressive speed. Luckily for many Iwa nin, a signal from their cage put a stop to their preemptive strike, saving them from the blonde's retaliatory carnage. Onoki was many things in life, but a fool was not one of them. Fighting this man would cost too many good men, and they needed those men to aid their ally Kumo in the upcoming war. Ah yes, the gate, well, that was mostly to gain your attention. Since it was either that or having to fight my way to your office, and this just seemed so much simpler to do in the long run, Naruto replied sheepishly, his grin causing many of the gathered shinobi to growl angrily. It was much like that of his father. Also, your guards felt the need to attack me when they learned my identity, so I felt that destroying your gate would more than make up for it. That actually drew a small smirk from the elderly Cage, the man's eyes glazing momentarily as he visited a past memory. You also seem to have misunderstood me. Naruto continued, drawing the Cage from his thoughts. I'm not a Konoha nin, in fact, I actually plan to watch Konoha burn into nothing but ashes. I have come here to ask that you ally with me since I have a plan that will aid you immensely with this war you have with them. This caused a great many to blink and gape in surprise, completely blindsided that the son of the most powerful Hokage sought the destruction of his own village, a village both his parents died to protect. Why would you seek to see father's village destroyed? Onoki asked, highly curious of the blonde's reasoning. And if you were able to somehow succeed in this plan of yours, why should we ally with you and not just kill you to end the bloodline of our sworn enemy? My father's, the word was spat out with such venom and malice that a few of the Iwa nin actually recoiled away from the blonde. Village, as you say, has made me its enemy for reasons I choose not to share, and when I finally put my plan into action, you will see that I make a far better ally than enemy. My master told me about how you fought him long ago. And I was wondering how your back was doing. Onoki narrowed his eyes at the unspoken threat, seeing the blonde in a slightly new light. Very well, Namikaze, should you actually succeed in this plan of yours, what exactly is it that you want out of all this? Many of the gathered nin began to protest at this point, but a pointed look from their Cage, as well as a killing intent-laced chakra spike, was enough to silence them. A wise decision to hear me out, Naruto replied, his hand slipping into one of his pockets and causing the various nin to stiffen. All I want in return is for you to end this feud with my family in the future. Let your hatred for the Namikaze name die with my father, for I renounce it after today and will not use it as my own ever again. I am an Uzumaki who wants to live my own life with a family of my own in the future without the fear that Iwa will try to kill them just because I am of that man's bloodline. And as long as your village does not harm my family, then they will have nothing to fear, since I personally have nothing against you, since I am a shinobi no more and do not care for shinobi matters. The second and last thing I wish is, when all is said and done, once Fire Country is conquered, I want to personally remove the head of the Fire Daimyo myself. I would also like to offer this as an apology for your gate as well as proof of my commitment to our future alliance. With that he slowly withdrew his hand, causing the shinobi to relax as he was holding a simple sealing scroll, a scroll that was soon tossed to the elderly Cage. Onoki simply eyed the scroll warily before handing it to one of his jonin, standard procedure when dealing with neutral and enemy shinobi, who opened it and read. A few seconds passed before the man's eyes widened, his jaw dropping as he stared at the scroll. He stuttered, unable to complete his sentence due to his immense shock. Get on with it, man. Onoki snapped, highly annoyed at the man's suspense-building behavior. It's the instructions to the Rasengan, as well as the Yondaime speed training routine Chushikage-sama. The man shouted, causing all those who heard him to copy his earlier expression. Snatching the scroll away, Onoki stared at it for a few seconds as his men celebrated behind him before turning his attention to the blonde, a wide smile stretching across his face. I look forward to our future alliance, Namikaze-san, Onoki spoke, holding a hand out to the blonde. Naruto immediately took the man's hand, his grin widening as he shook hands with the powerful Kage. Please, call me Naruto, he said as he patted the elderly Kage on the back. Now before I tell you my plan to aid you in this war, do you have any beer? I could kill someone for a drink right now. 1 week later, Naruto spent a good week in Iwa going over his plans for Konoha with Onoki and the village council, taking time to also give pointers to the many who attempted to learn the Rasengan, which accounted for over 80% of the active shinobi roster. By the end of the week, most Iwanin were on the second step of learning the technique, but it was a slow progress since most of them found it difficult to complete the first stage alone. Naruto was quick to calm them, however, as Jiraiya had taken 3 months to master the technique and the Iwanin were lacking the bonus of a shadow clone's assistance. They were well aware that it would take them quite some time to fully master the Rasengan. In the end, it was decided by the Chushikage and the council that they would gladly ally with the blonde and help with his plan. One of their stipulations, however, was that the alliance would only come into effect once Naruto had completed his portion of it. In exchange, they would grant him sanctuary should he ever require it. In order to keep the alliance a secret and prevent Konoha from learning about the shared plan for the future, it was decided that Naruto would be put in Iwa's bingo book, marked as a criminal and enemy of the state. He also helped keep the alliance a secret by aiding them in wiping out all spies that Jiraiya had within the village. On Naruto's suggestion, as he was getting incredibly bored with politics, he was set up to fight a battalion of Iwanin in order to decide his rank. Quite the challenge, as the last man to take on a battalion of Iwa's best had been the Yondaime Hokage himself. This battle would allow Naruto to show off his power, as well as prove once and for all that he had the strength required to do his portion of the plan against Konoha. The battle was quick and gruesome, the blonde blazing through his opponents and disabling them with his techniques. It took him less than 2 minutes to slaughter them all. 500 of Iwa's best, including Onoki of both scales himself, all beat down and killed in a matter of minutes. The blonde definitely lived up to his heritage and bold claims. In the end, he was marked an SS rank threat with a simple, flee on sight, order, the second to receive such a ranking in all of Iwa's history, the first being his father. With that display, the citizens of Iwa couldn't help but believe in the blonde's chances. He could actually succeed in helping them bring down Konoha. This had of course led to much partying and drinking. The next day, the bingo books were sent out and Naruto left Iwa, highly pleased with what he had accomplished. 3 days later, Konoha. For close to 2 weeks after a certain blonde's sudden reappearance, according to the only surviving member of the wave invasion force, Suna had spent much of her time arguing with the village council and elders, said blonde being the topic of their many conversations. It was only the revelation of Naruto's heritage that prevented the updating of his bingo book entry and the release of the hunter nin, since they couldn't spare any nin if they were to survive the coming war, ending the argument with Suna's victory, much to the chagrin of many council members since they wanted him found and enslaved to serve and protect Konoha. However, this was the safest option to take. As far as the council was concerned, they couldn't place the son of the beloved Yondaime in the bingo books. What would Iwa do with such information? They were also unable to send Hunter Nin after him, because like Sunad mentioned, they were too short-handed to do that. The enemy would probably kill those Hunter Nin if they were given the chance, since dead Konoha shinobi only meant that Konoha was weaker in the long run. In the end, they had decided to place his entry in the book as an A-rank threat to be captured on sight. It was their hope that someone would be able to defeat and return the wayward Namikaze. If it was done, then they could use him to get their alliances back and be better prepared for the war. And they believed that anyone who went after him would have no problem capturing him, since he had been weak when he was supposedly killed, and in their minds he had hidden away for 7 years by hiding his chakra and wouldn't have trained in any way in his pursuit to stay hidden. This belief of theirs was dashed away only a matter of days later. Sunad found herself repeating the same actions she'd performed for the last few days, namely holing up in her office and drinking sake, her thoughts revolving around Naruto and her plans to gain control of him once more so as to gain their alliance back. It was at this time that Shizune barged in, the younger woman looking terribly flustered and shocked. Sunad-sama, you have to see this, Shizune yelled, waving some book around. Go away, Shizune, I'm not in the mood for more paperwork. Sunad replied, her head dropping to the desk with a tired groan. She hadn't been sleeping well for the past few months since the fear of attack was always on her mind. It's about Naruto. Shizune continued undeterred. He's in Iwa's bingo book. What? Let me see. Suna shouted, leaping to her feet and snatching the book from her assistant, quickly flipping to the back pages. It's on page 3. Shizune pointed out, greatly shocking Suna, since only the highest-ranked threats were placed at the front of the bingo books and seeing as pages 1 and 2 were simple introductory paragraphs. Flipping to the page, she was shocked to see that it was indeed an entry for Naruto, an image of the boy posted in the top left corner looking nothing like he did year ago. He was short-haired as well as far more muscular than when he left the village. The entry below the picture did not serve to calm her racing heart. Name: Namikaze Naruto. So they know his real name. Suna blanched, horrified that the information had gotten out despite all of her attempts to keep it under wraps. Now the whole world knows of your heritage, Naruto. We will look like even bigger fools to the rest of the world for trying to kill off Minato's son. Rank: SS. That caused her eyes to widen to new lengths. That can't just be because of his father's identity. Onoki is far too smart and sly to hold such a grudge and place him in the book on that knowledge alone. What have you done, Naruto? Description: age: roughly 20 to 21 years of age. Height: between 6 foot 6 inches and 6 foot 8 inches. Appearance: short, blonde hair. Sapphire blue eyes. Usually adorned in a dark blue jacket. Wields immense taijutsu abilities that are unmatched by anyone. Last affiliated village: the village hidden in the leaves. Rank before leaving village: Genin. Reason for entry: charged with the destruction of the village gate. Charged with the slaughter of 500 Iwanin of Chunin and above rank. Charged with the assault and attempted murder on Onoki of both scales, Sandaime Chushikage. He did what? Suna raged, eyes widening as she read the entry. This made her feel mixed emotions since on the one hand he had unknowingly helped Konoha by killing off so many Iwa shinobi so they would need time to recover their numbers and might even call off the war entirely since with that many shinobi gone they wouldn't be able to aid Kumo as much as they would like. On the other hand, she was pissed since Naruto was never meant to have this type of power to wield, and once he was captured his mind would be erased so they could start from scratch and re-educate him into being the mindless weapon that they demanded of him, but not before documenting everything he knew so that they could strengthen themselves as well as find where he hid the funds he stole from the village when he left. How strong are you, Naruto? To not only defeat a battalion of Iwanin, but to fight and survive a battle with Onoki, this is no mere feat. Known abilities: extraordinary speed and strength. Capable of an unknown speed technique on par with the Yondaime Hokage's Flying Thunder God and the Yondaime Reikage's Lightning Armor, this unknown technique is unrecognizable. Inhuman taijutsu abilities. Expert user of shadow clones. Capable of many powerful and seal-less jutsu. Recommended course of action: flee on sight, do not engage target if you value your life. Below that was a chart showing an estimation of the blonde's abilities. The genjutsu portion had a question mark while the taijutsu, kenjutsu and ninjutsu portions were off the charts. This was truly an SS rank shinobi. Suna read and reread the entry many times before she turned to her desk, activating a seal and summoning one of Jiraiya's toads, the creature simply staring at her as it awaited its orders. Find Jiraiya, tell him to drop everything and find Naruto. I want him found and brought here to protect this village from Iwa. Suna ordered, receiving a salute from the toad before it disappeared in a puff of smoke. Turning to Shizune, Suna made a choice: she would have to update their bingo books as well, otherwise, Konoha would be made to look like a fool due to their lack of information. Update our bingo books with the information supplied in here, add in anything we may know that they don't and move him up to S rank with a capture-only reward. We need the brat here alive. Hi Tsunade-sama. Shizune replied, running off to complete her orders. With that finished, Tsunade sank back into her desk and poured another glass of sake, her thoughts continuing their revolution around a certain blonde brat that she had come to hate over the years. Her hatred for the brat only grew once she sent a report to the fire daimyo, who then ordered her to find him, and to not only that but to offer him anything that he desired to stay in the village, even the seat of Hokage if he so wished. And once the war was over and their alliances were back on track, she was to then find means to control him to be a puppet leader so that way their allies wouldn't leave them for the second time. Tsunade was loath to let the brat sit in that seat of power for even 1 second, but her orders were clear and she could only find quiet resolution in knowing that he would suffer in the long run since he would be controlled like the tool he was in the end. Near Suna. Naruto looked at the vast desert of wind country with his hood up and his bandana over his face to block the sands from hitting his eyes, as he felt it was the opposite of the western wastelands in many aspects, and yet the same in others. The cruel winds, sand everywhere, and the many different creatures including humans that had long since learned to survive the harsh environmental hazards it held for many years. The Hakato user didn't care for it though, as he had no interest in any of these things, since he was on his way to see his friend and time was of the essence since he wanted to go home for a bit and spend time with his wife instead of having to send a shadow clone and being bombarded by the memories when she drained them dry. He didn't understand how she was able to hold out for so long, but he was guessing that she was holding in and repressing her sexual urges like a floodgate that he had just blasted open and she acted on impulse. Not that he was complaining in any way. And now here he was, just a few hundred feet away from Suna, and already there was a smell in the air of humans being that he had come to familiarize himself with since it was a smell he had come smell quite often in the wastelands. It was the smell of an attack on a village since there was the distinct smell of smoke on the horizon that was far too strong to be just a simple fire of some sort, as he knew Gaara would never let anyone boss burn the village down and or sink the village in any way since if they tried the sand here was perfect for Gaara to use to aid his village. Of that, Naruto remembered that much about the one-tailed Jinchuriki, and knew if there was one place he should go to see a long-lost friend it was Suna. So why did he get this feeling something bad had just happened to Gaara? His gut feeling had never let him down before, so he began to worry a bit for his friend's safety. Speeding up once again to further decrease the gap between himself to Suna, he found that the village had just recently been attacked, as indicated by the tall tail signs of smoke seen from several places, and stopped when he was soon surrounded by Suna shinobi. Each of them armed, looking at him suspiciously knowing he could be an enemy sent to attack them while they were weakened by their recent attack, as they had never seen someone like him before in terms of his choice of clothing, complexion, and overall muscly form. Other than the Raikage himself, but this man was obviously not him. Identify yourself, said a Suna shinobi to Naruto's right. I'm here to see Sabaku no Gaara. Judging by the smoke behind your walls when I was traveling here. I came at a bad time, said Naruto before he looked behind the Suna shinobi in front of him to see Hatake Kakashi, Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, and some pale-skinned boy that could almost rival the Orochimaru himself if they were stand next to each other. With the exception of the fake smile of course. Who are you? Said Sakura, as she saw this large stranger just stare at her with his covered face, and saw Sasuke out of the corner of her eyes narrow them at the man since his face looked familiar to him in some way that he was unsure of and he felt enraged about it for some reason. My name is not really important right now. I came to this village to speak to Sabaku no Gaara. What has happened here? Asked Naruto, as he kept the tugging feeling in the back of his mind to obliterate the four-leaf shinobi from existence, and make himself a target before his plan was put into action. The Kazekage has been kidnapped by the Akatsuki. We're here to help save Gaara at the request of his siblings since they need superior shinobi to do what they clearly can't do themselves, said Sasuke with a smirk in hopes of impressing this man before them and to make himself known to foreigners entering Suna. If his name becomes famous enough then people would flood to their village in droves and help the village survive to see him, or at least how it played out in his mind. So Gaara is the Kazekage now, huh? I must congratulate my old friend when I save him myself, said Naruto to himself before turning around having already sensed where the Akatsuki members had taken Gaara in the distance. Wait, you said you were friends with him. Since when? Said Temari having walked in on their conversation. Gaara had only ever been friends with one person, and the last time she checked Naruto was dead, or at least he was according to the rumors for the past several years. Some time ago. It's been a while and I'm sure he doesn't recognize me. However, I know after we talk, he'll recall who I am, and embrace me in friendship as I did so long ago with him, said Naruto and began walking away with his hands in his pockets like he always did before vanishing from sight in the western wastelands, like some kind of ghost or spirit that became a legend like his mentor had before him. What kind of jutsu was that? Said Sakura while looking at Kakashi and saw he was also confused since he had never seen anything like it either. He also mentally cursed himself for not trying to copy it with his eye so that it could be taught to Sasuke when he had the time to do so. But he didn't really plan on it since they had been sent on this mission to try and help Gaara. The mission had multiple outcomes to it, with either Gaara being so thankful that they had aided him in his survival to the point that they would aid them in the coming war, or else they would eliminate him and subdue the Biju so as to seal it within Sasuke and add to his already impressive strength. They had another shinobi named Yamato with the abilities to suppress the beast already heading out towards the Akatsuki's hideout already. After he had heard that Naruto was still alive and had done what he did to Iwa, he had devoted himself to his senjutsu training and mastered it shortly afterwards. Now he was ready to fight Naruto and defeat him, settling the score between them once and for all. We'll find out more about him later. Come on you three. We need to track down the two Akatsuki members and save Gaara before that new guy does, said Kakashi, as he felt a cold shivering sensation crawl up his spine, and the Junin felt like he had just missed something important. Wave. Naruto and Tsunami were walking back to the house after they had acquired everything that Tsunami needed to cook for today. The blonde had a smile on his face and Tsunami sported one on her mature face as they walked past the many other houses and people that lived in Wave Country. Tsunami had told Naruto everything that happened since his rumored death as they walked through the town towards their house. Tsunami got to the door itself before she gave him a lustful look. Thanks for helping me with the groceries, I wonder how I am going to repay you, she said as she locked eyes with him. Naruto knew exactly where she was going with this. Naruto looked at her up and down before leering at her. I can think of a few ways, he said with a suggestive wiggle of his eyebrows. Tsunami blushed before she matched his look with a saucy smirk on her face. She stepped in front of him and she gave him a show as she swayed her hips, her plump and round ass jiggling as she walked in front of him. Naruto made sure to keep his eyes glued to it the rest of the trek into the shared house. When they arrived, they noticed that Inari wasn't home yet since somehow he had a sixth sense about this and knew when to stay away from the house and that only served to bubble up their excitement since they didn't have to worry about him being scared. Tsunami moved towards the kitchen so she could sort out everything she had bought and Naruto took a seat at the table so he could watch her move around. He watched with a smirk on his face as she made a show of arranging all the groceries they had bought in town. She would make exaggerated movements to accentuate her well-developed and big assets. She would also look back at Naruto to glance at him, a smirk on her face and eyes inviting as she kept arranging the stuff, much to his enjoyment. Naruto looked down to see that he had a bulge in his pants before he looked up to see that Tsunami had put away the last item and she was bending over the kitchen counter, looking back at him with inviting eyes as she jiggled her ass at him and swayed her hip enticingly. Come over him please, she said to him as she motioned towards her with her index finger and a lick of her lips. Naruto grinned as he stood up and walked towards her. He approached her and grabbed her hips as he pressed his crotch against her ass. She began to grind her ass into his covered erection and Naruto began to shove his dick into her motions, making her moan lowly. Is this your way of thanking me? He asked her with no amused tone of voice. Tsunami shrugged her shoulders as she began to put more force into her motions. Partly. I also haven't had a good fuck since this morning. So can you help a girl out? She pleaded with a lustful moan. Sure. Why not? Agreed Naruto with a shrug of his own shoulders before he began to grope Tsunami's plump ass and spanked it, much to her approval as she began to moan loudly and work her hips with more enthusiasm and force. His fingers sunk into the covered flesh as they grinded into each other. Tsunami closed her eyes as she arched her back, her hands gripping the edge of the counter as she could feel the shape of Naruto's erect cock against her covered pussy lips. She could feel her panties dampening as she continued to shove her ass into Naruto's pelvis in a very sensual fashion. Those past dancing lessons really were paying off right now as she began to swirl her hips. Naruto smacked both of her ass cheeks, the flesh jiggling and she moaned heavily as he began to make thrusting motions and Tsunami began to shove back forcefully. This continued for a few minutes before he decided that he wanted to move on. He was horny as fuck right now with this MILF doing the things she was doing and he just wanted to get a piece of his wife while he was like this. He pulled back a little and she looked back at him with some confusion before he grasped her hand directed it towards his crotch. She gave him an understanding look before she smirked as she began to rub up and down his length. She moaned as just how long and thick it felt. She couldn't wait to have that godly cock inside of her churning up her insides and making her his all over again. Naruto meanwhile ripped off her skirt and shirt getting a squeal from her. He inspected her creamy skin that had no blemishes on it other than the angry red color that her ass cheeks already sported due to how much he had spanked her. He unclipped her bra and he licked his lips as he discarded them, watching her big breasts were freed. His right hand began to play with her right tit and his left hand snaked around her wide hip and reached into her crotch and he began to rub her clothed pussy. His eyes widened in amusement. "Someone is already wet," he remarked with an amused voice as he began to work on her mound. Tsunami moaned with delight as she felt him playing with two of her most sensitive places. "I'm wet because of you, Naruto," she said before she decided that she wanted to feel his dick directly. With dexterous fingers, she freed it from its confinements and her eyes widened when she beheld the pinnacle of manhood that Naruto was proud to call his own. It bulged like the muscles on the rest of his body. Tsunami jacked him off rhythmically as she paid special attention to his bulbous head and long shaft, tenderly palming him as she moaned with delight at the thought of this humongous cock eventually going inside of her with the purpose of ruining her from the inside so that only he would be able to satisfy her from then on. Not that she was going to complain, mind you. And they would proceed to screw each other's brains out for the rest of the night, the dinner plans becoming forgotten in the heat of their passionate moment. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.